our distinguished panelists, Mr. Amit Thakur, Managing Partner, Wavemaker Vietnam, Ms. Lê Thanh Tú, Chief Marketing Officer, Nestle Waters Vietnam. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Lê Xuân Trung, Principal Professional, Mobile Experience, Samsung Electronics Vietnam, and Ms. Dung Nguyen, Country Head, Grab Ads, Grab. And our moderator, Mr. Rafał Sislowski, Industry Head of Consumer Goods, Google Vietnam. A big round of applause.
Welcome. We've got the graveyard shift, so to say, and we're going to be talking about ROI, not the sexiest topic in the world, but one that is definitely becoming important. And I think we can all understand that a holistic and agile understanding of inputs and how they contribute to output sales is incredibly important across the organization. I think a lot has changed recently, fragmentation, online, offline, and it's just much more complex. I think on top of that, the demands brands have on every dollar that's put in has become more and more, is increasing. And I can feel that talking to my clients and media agencies. So I'm going to kick it off and just ask one by one, introduce yourself and what does ROI mean to you in one sentence?
Hi, thanks, Raf. I'm Amit Thakur, Managing Partner with Wavemaker, managing client relationship for key clients and managing strategy and products, working with clients like Mondelez. So, Raf, to your question, before we start, I was just looking at AI and I asked ROI for Vietnam market. And what I get from AI is that in the Vietnam marketing industry, a good marketing ROI is generally, any guesses? It's 5:1. So for every $1, the return should be $5. Okay, that's AI in Vietnam. Okay, a lot of pressure, agreed. So, of course, when we talk about ROI, we have come a long way from the traditional way of measuring ROI, at least from a media lens, to today discussing with our clients of what impact does media have on their business, right? And hence the discussion on ROI from the point of view of growing business, right? And if you were to take this part of, so how does ROI change today and why is it so critical? Because the ask in business has remained same. If you ask a CEO today versus 20 years back, they still talk about business growth, penetration growth, or market share growth. But what has changed is the context. What has changed is the media landscape. And that's when the ROI discussion becomes more critical and important to have of how every buck that we invest drives business growth or penetration or market share.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Tu. I'm a Chief Marketing and Sustainability Officer for Nestle Water, La Vie in Vietnam. And actually, when we talk about brand ROI, I think that for us, it is the shared languages in all of the ManCom meetings. It is the connections that help marketing to talk to finance, talk to CEO, and talk to all of the YAM members in order to make a decision. Yeah, so if you ask me what is the observation of the brand ROI evolution in the recent years, I think that it can be summarized in the 4 key elements. Number one is that in terms of the scope, if I compare to a few years ago, honestly, the ROI is mainly focused on the sales push, promotion activities. But nowadays, to be honest with you, from our own experience, it covers 80% of our marketing investment. So every single dollar, besides some hygiene factors, we need to prove the impact. So the scope is become significantly more compared to before. And the number 2 is in terms of the nature of the KPIs. Before, we mainly focus on the internal sales or sometimes that the third-party tracking KPIs like value market shares or the consumer behaviors of consumption or penetration. But honestly, in the recent year, we see the emerging data And the data enable us to see a lot of other KPIs. And to be honest, I see some of the members in the audience today is expert in data CRM. And honestly, that it is exactly what we rely a lot to make decisions nowadays and measure ROI carefully. We want to ensure that how many people we acquire into our database, how many is converted, and how much purchase they make. Yeah, so we are very carefully into the nature of the KPIs. It become much more concrete, specific, and actionable compared to before. And the third element, I think that in terms of the time frame, normally before we often see it in the 3 months or 6 months of the duration of the campaign. But honestly, because we start to build the relationship with the consumers and the campaign or any activity, it's just like one slide in the consumer journey. So for us, and especially for Nestle in general, we often look at least 1 year for the 12 months, because after the first acquire, we give some time to track the repeat, give some time to cross sales to track more like upgrading sales value of each customer. Yeah, so honestly, it is much bigger. And the last point is about portfolio, because I think that rarely one company just sell one product. Even for our business, it's quite simple, it's water, but we sell multiple SKU and multiple occasions to use. And honestly, with that data mindset, we enable the brand ROI into much advanced look and much valuable to the business. One activity, drive one transaction, but later on that relationship can start to expand into multiple transactions and become much more loyal and valuable to our business.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Chung, as Samsung, how are you guys looking at ROI?
Hi, my name is Trung Le, and I'm the marketing director for Samsung Mobile Experience. Now, it's a very interesting question, by the way. I've been asked lately quite often by all of the CEO and presidents, either in Vietnam or across regions, how do you measure all the brand investment and that sort of thing that you are doing in the marketplace, right? And for us, there is only one term, which is conversion. You can understand conversion, you can give different definitions of conversion, depends on how you look at that. I mean, something simple, conversion in terms of how much of traffic you drive into your website, you know? Or it could be lower funnel in terms of how much sales that you make in terms of short term. Conversion here could also be, you know, how many customers, new customers that you acquire in terms of acquisition, or how much retention you can have, you know, for whatever activities that you're doing. Bear in mind that for our business, we actually working on data a lot, so first-party data. So basically, we could actually measure full funnel. We can track everything, and we see how much incrementality that we generate over all sort of activities that we are doing. But again, to be honest, that is a very, very difficult question to answer sometimes as well. It depends, you know, in the scope. It depends on the brand. It depends on, you know, your brand status as well. Either you're a small brand or you're a big brand in a marketplace. You will have more investment, more muscles, and I normally say muscles, to do more things. But yeah, conversion. On top of my mind, every night I sleep, I'm thinking of conversion. Okay, thank you.
What about at Grab?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dung. I'm heading the Grab Ads business in Vietnam. So big plus one to all the commentary and also definition that our panelists have also shared. For me, as an experience, right, I have 10 years of working in brand marketing and FCG. So I'm wearing the brand marketing hats before and pitching the investment to the CFO and the financial board as well. And recently, in the past 3 years, I pivoted my career into advertising tech. And also at the same time, I have to pitch the proposals, right, to ask for an investment from our clients and agency as well. Now, with that diverse experience, what I see as a common theme is we have the word ROI, right, in every single pitch, either to internal CFO or board, or a pitch to our external client. We have to justify the return on that investment. in a very simple definition, it is what is the added value, what is the exchange in terms of values that the investment of the dollars, the time and efforts that the other stakeholder have to invest in this particular campaign or projects that they will get in returns. Now, if we took that definition, we will definitely have a broader understanding in terms of it can vary from sales in returns. It can become, an incremental in terms of the new users you're going to acquire for your business and etc. as well. So that will be my short answers for definition of ROI.
And MMM has changed quite a bit. Back in my brand manager days, we would pay Nielsen or Kantar some money. 6-month process. Everyone sits down very excited to look at the report. Finance is in the room. Suddenly you have finance in your marketing meetings looking at where you're spending based on the MMM report. And today we have a lot of tech, so it's much more agile. Clients have invested in products, they're connecting the dots, and we're getting to a point now where there are clients making decisions on spending on a weekly, daily, monthly basis versus dipstick MMM deep dives once every 2 years. So Chung, I'll ask you at Samsung, how are you looking at, what specific measures are you looking at, and how are you getting them when it comes to ROI?
Right, I think I give you, to answer this question, I actually mentioned that in the previous answers as well, but just put in the correct context. And I'm totally with you in terms of, how much agility or flexibility we need to have the conversations or be ready in the conversation saying, okay, what do I need to do tomorrow to change the plan, to optimize my plan? Either you want to do upper funnel, or lower funnel, or mid funnel, or whatsoever, along the funnel, as long as you can generate so-called the ROI. You can define what sort of ROI. So for us, in our business, again, brand metrics, ROIs is default. Fundamentally, we have to achieve. There's no excuses for that, by the way. So when we're talking about awareness, we're talking about, all sort of the funnels, the brand affiliations, all sort of thing. Whatever you do in terms of marketing brand campaign, that's by default you have to achieve. And every year it's 1.5 times over the previous year. So there's no chance to say I can't meet that. Yeah, so that is by default. Now, as I mentioned, conversion is the things that we keep talking about these days because in terms of economic downturns, lots of things happening so rapidly, changes and on, all sort of things in terms of consumers, in terms of the business, in terms of the economic context as well. So unfortunately, like it or not, we still have to maneuver around and try to optimize. Sometimes we do a lot more in terms of performance, marketing to optimize for the short-term KPI. But bear in mind that sometimes we also have to think about, the certain level of investment that we need for the longer-term brand building activity. So we look at I rather say it's a complex kind of ROI, KPIs, etc. When for Samsung in particular, not necessarily either one or all. Yeah, and everything. By the way, everything at Samsung is we quantify in terms of sales number. So whatever you do tomorrow morning, we do daily tracking sales. So if we wake up in the morning, 7 to 8 a.m. in the morning, I only see the sales the day before. So if the day before the sales doesn't deliver against the target, then you need to do something about that. So that is that kind of cycles happening every single day. So there's no such of, either you do this or you do that, right?
And one of the hot topics today is just short-term performance sales versus long-term branding. And we see this specifically now with the evolution of online immediate data, commerce, online commerce growing significantly faster than areas of general trade. How are you balancing, I'll maybe look at Grab first, and how are you looking at short-term sales versus long-term branding when you're speaking with some of your clients?
Yeah, that's a very common question or asked from our clients to us at Grab, right? And as you might know, Grab is an ecosystem, and we also offer a service which is quick commerce, GrabMart, GrabFood to deliver some certain GMV to our customers. So very naturally, right, one of the questions when our clients come to us is, how much is the daily sales? What is the uplift? And one of the things that we observe and see in our client who can grow in the long run and also sustainably with us is we not only look at a daily sale or transactions only, but instead it is a long-term vision of how we're going to build the business together, what is the roadmap, what are the phases that we're going to grow, and what are the beyond sales and transaction indicators that we can look at. Now, Grab can also offer, right, brands like beverages brand in terms of, you know, how many of the new users can you acquire, how many frequent and loyal customer can you grow together with Grab, and we look at metrics like the attachment rate, how much of the product it attached with every single group Grab food orders, and etc. So the key thing that I want to highlight here as well is us when we look at measurement to justify the ROI, please be encouraged to look at the attributions that our solutions and maybe proposals, right, can do for the business, and also track on that very frequently, and that would be my request.
How about at Nestle? How are you balancing some of the short-term sales demands and long-term branding?
Actually, at Nestle, we have some rule of thumbs that I think that maybe we can share. So normally at Nestle, we often start with the consumer first. And what it means by that is that we see the value driver, what factors that makes the consumer make decision or take actions. And from that, we map with our job to be done to see what type of activities we need to deliver. Because sometimes for some category, it is really hard selling that we need to focus a little bit more in terms, I temporarily call short terms, but some category is very heavy in terms of the brand building and they focus on top of mind. We focus a bit more on the brand building part. So honestly, it is really flexible starting with that factor. But then honestly, there's no perfect solution. So we always need to have another layer is about taking the learnings, test and learn approach every time that we having the historical as the baseline, but not up to the level that Anh Trường do is every single day that having reaction. Maybe our water is having some luxury of a bit longer time to react. Yeah, but then basically that it can be also like a monthly. When it's in the peak season, it can be weekly. Yeah, so actually we taking the test and learn approach like that and keep updating, keep monitoring and keep reacting. Yeah, but then the last thing that I think that one of interesting thing that I see people often blindfolded when doing the planning is they often take the basic original classification of activities to refer it to short-term or long-term. Because top of mind when we were at the school, right, we see that, okay, as long as it's promotion, it is short-term, and as long as it's communication, it is long-term. But honestly, from our own experience recently, we see totally different things. For example, if we communicate the right occasion reminder in the right season, it drives the immediate peak in consumption for us. Yeah, and even for promotion, if we're having some kind of tactics that start to recruit the end user into our database, it starts to trigger the long-term brand building things. So honestly, I think that right now with the data-enabled solution, we start to look at every single thing at the two lens. Short-term, what does it impact? And the long-term, what does it impact? So we no longer put it into either or, but we make it and. Yeah, so we have everything having the short-term and long-term impact, and we do deliberately track it, not only in months, but like we track it in year. Yeah, and honestly, because our data constrained in year, but if we start to run it in the longer term, we can even track it in the customer lifetime value. Yeah, so it is what our belief.
Yeah. And at Samsung, how are you looking at long-term versus short-term branding?
I feel like in this panel, I have so many questions. Okay, long-term versus short-term, interesting. Now, how to put it this way? It depends on who you're talking to. Yeah, one way to look at that. Definitely, if you look into some, if you talk to all the, sorry, I put it this way. It depends on who you're talking to, but also it depends on the context you are in. So number one, first of all, you asking yourself where you are standing in the entire marketplace at this moment in time competitively, and in the relative context, right? There is no short-term versus long-term. This is always goes together, right? They go together. So you will decide, like I am sitting here, I will have to decide whether, okay, this is something that I do because of a sales drop. You cannot say like tomorrow my sales drop and I say, okay, I have all the investment I put in long-term. You can't convince anyone, right? Even the sales head or your commercial head or you're talking to, CFO or CEO and you say, no, I have 1 million I put into long-term activities and etc. and forget the short-term. No, there's no such, right? So there's always the balance that we are talking about. So in terms of what comes, sometimes you face the challenge, what comes first, right? And to answer what comes first, to prioritize, it also depends on where you're standing. Back to my first point where I'm saying, where you're standing today. If your competitors outside, they do a lot of things and you are saying, no, I'm doing long-term, then your sales tomorrow drop, weekly drop, monthly drops, then where's the money for long-term then? Okay, so a kind of dilemma, sometimes you have to balance. But there's no doubt one thing, and sometimes as marketeer, we will say, oh my goodness, everything we do is about promotion, try short-term sales strike, right? You want on the strike in terms, you want to improve your running rate, but don't forget one fact that my previous life, when I was in FMCG, we talk about running rate versus the baseline. Long-term investment or long-term brand building will help you to improve your baseline. And that's critically important, right? You see a lot of campaign, like I used to work for Unilever, right? So we are talking a lot about Dove campaign. Why Dove have to do a lot of self-esteem campaign? Or Nike, did you just do it, etc. This is all the long term, and you can trace it under brand purpose, brand mission, brand love, or whatsoever. Anyway, the bottom line is all about the long-term investment to build your brand. And what is the consequence or the result out of that? Basically, it will help you to try more in terms of retention, in terms of loyalty. And it's actually help you to save costs as well. Sometimes that's very important to look into that perspective. Yeah. When you have a strong brand in consumer mind, whatever you do, cost effectiveness will be much better than, like you do all focus on the short term. But again, nobody doubts about on the short term actions.
And I also reflect on when you're trying to win in a category and build a brand, what does your brand stand for? What are the key category drivers? Am I owning the key benefit statements over a longer term period? And you start to understand how much Samsung, I think, has got proud to own, or premium. Pantene will have something like health. Head & Shoulders will have something like 100% dandruff protection. And there's a correlation between top-of-mind awareness, ownership of key benefit areas, and tracking them over time. And we know that a brand campaign with a strong message, invested in the right channels, will build key category drivers and grow your brand over time. And I think that's one thing that, as a marketer and a brand manager, you grow up with and learn, and not losing sight of that, I think, is critical over time. There's going to be pressure from finance on this quarter, that quarter. You can move to a flighting model. You can say we can't spend, but we have a great innovation coming. We're going to load on that. But that's one thing that I learned over time is, you have a brand, you want to own a position. That position should be the category driver and purchase driver for your consumer. And you want to track that and grow that versus your competitive set. And I think when I look at what I see in the market and the short-term pressures, they're definitely there. But you can see in a lot of the brands the language around, no, I need to maintain my brand and ownership of these key equity areas. But I mean, from a media perspective, I'm sure you get these questions all the time, and it's probably gotten more serious over time, especially with the emergence of e-commerce and digital and just access to data. How are you advising a lot of the clients and brands you're working with on this dilemma?
So firstly, I love some of the points too, and Chung, that you mentioned. I feel one thing that we should all be aware of, that our short-term actions automatically become our long-term strategy, right? And hence, I agree with you that, it goes hand in hand. Now, the game really lies in, Raf, to the question that you asked, where we work very closely with some of our clients who have this challenge thankfully, we have now instruments and sort of weapons within the media which could help drive both together, And I hear Chung saying again and again about lower funnel, right? So we all focused on funnel-wise approach. And we all aware also that the funnel is merging, right? There is no linear way of consumer behavior or journey anymore. And hence the intersection at any stage drives both awareness or a favorability or consideration leading to conversion, right? As long as we are able to identify the right levers driving these as a mix is where we are able to bridge the gap. I'm picking up what got shared by Rohit in the morning, where he showed the example of a commerce campaign, but not a promotion ad, rather an emotional ad, but equally drove conversion. So it will always be a combination of what communication and message you put on forth in front of consumers. And of course, to the point that Anil mentioned in the morning from Mondelez, that hence knowing your consumer, what they are looking for, is the starting point. Understanding that, building an emotional connect, along with the right promotion, putting it across in the right mix of platform mix, which will help us drive short-term objectives of gaining growth and sales month on month, like Samsung has every morning. But equally, if we are able to focus on building brand equity parallelly, right? And we do have today mix on media. As a matter of fact, Group M, we are so passionate about branding that we actually named one of our tools called Architect, and which is the theme of today's session, right? So Architect actually goes through the consumer journey, understand what the brand objective is, both in the long term and short term, uses that objective as the final destination, to look through what is the platform mix, to look through what is the audience that we are targeting, and suggest a plan that can be customized for brand in that sense.
So the last question I have is what role finance plays. So I'll look to you too, and how are you liaising with your finance team on some of these long-term and short-term objectives when it comes to long-term branding and short-term sales?
Honestly, I think that I kind of lucky marketing person because I have a quite understanding CFO. Honestly, I think that whenever we start the conversation with the investor, CEO or CFO, we should always understand what is the objective that they have in mind and their tension as well. I think that is a starting point first. If it's all about like, okay, I need to crack the target right now, so we need to talk into their language, and how everything makes sense for them. But then I think that if, again, coming back to the rule of thumb in Nestle, so what are the key things that we will look at? I think it's the three key things. Number one is the effectiveness in achieving their shared business objectives. But number two, I think that's about efficiency is what I would love to highlight, because most of the time, the marketeer is having so strong conviction to one options, and they're just trying to push for that, and honestly, I think it's a waste of time for all. But then honestly, I think that give them options. Give some scenarios on how you can crack one problem in a different ways and what is the ROI out of that. So it will be very easy for them to see that, okay, you have looked at multiple angles and this is the best one. They also co-made the decision with you. So there's no rejection and much less compared to other ways. And the last one, honestly, I think that is the beautiful thing in Nestle, that when we always try to push for excellence. Often when we come to budgeting, we just think, okay, effectiveness and efficiency and wrap the book. But we want to drive for excellence because it makes the competitiveness for the company and for the brand. And the excellence also having another good things is that we pilot for new things, we crack and bring another level of effectiveness and efficiency possible and never recorded before. And in that area, we also having some, if we spare some budget for that kind of excellence, we also having another story to tell to our CFO that we have some safe for the rainy days because something is not going on the right track. Okay, we temporarily accept, pause the excellence. We keep it for you as a safety buffer. Yeah, so it is the three key words that effectiveness, efficiency, and excellence is the key things that we try to convince and align with our investor. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to a close. I think time's running out. I think coming to a common understanding with your team and CFO, I think, is incredibly important. A long-term view versus a short-term view, and not just looking at a campaign. KPIs, not just on specific sales, but also a longer-term view on attribution and basket size, and longer term, I think, is super important. And then, media agency, technology, and looking for assistance is super important. Google also just launched Meridian a few weeks ago, and we're also ourselves looking to help our clients understand how their campaigns are performing and sort of give them a sense of MMM and ROI on their investments. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us. I know it's the last session. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you to our moderator, and thank you to our guest speakers. We appreciate your time being here. We appreciate your insights, your experience, and your story that you brought to the stage today. Once again, thank you.